of Bridezilla. She wants 500 white lilies by tomorrow morning, and the shipment is stuck in San Diego. Jonna cried, pacing the living room of 201. Maybe we could paint some carnations, Chrissy suggested helpfully. I did that in kindergarten. They looked almost real. Chrissy, this is a $20,000 wedding, not a finger painting class, Jonna sighed. Jack walked over and put a hand on her shoulder. Hey, don't worry. I'll help. I can drive down to San Diego tonight. In what car? Jack, yours is just a collection of rust held together by hope, Jonna said. I'll borrow Roper's car again, Jack said, ignoring the memory of the overheated radiator. I'll tell him it's a secret mission for the veterans of foreign wars. The night was a blur of highway miles and the heavy scent of lilies. Jack returned at 4:00 a.m., his car smelling like a funeral parlor, but with the flowers intact. The wedding went off without a hitch, and Jonna received a glowing review. That night, the trio sat on their refurbished couch, exhausted but content. You know, Jonna said, looking at Jack, for a coward with a fake steel plate, you're a pretty decent guy. It's the headband, Jack joked, finally peeling the eyebrow pencil scar off his forehead. It gives me strength. Epilogue. The never-ending waltz. The days in apartment 201 would continue to blur into a montage of misunderstandings and triumphs. There would be more dates for Jack, more floral emergencies for Jonna, and more typing mishaps for Chrissy. Stanley would continue to peep, and Helen would continue to hope. But for now, the rent was paid, the puppy was fed, and the gay chef was safe in the home he had built with two girls who were much more than just roommates. They were a family, and in the wild, neon-lit world of 1970s California, that was the greatest treasure of all. Three's Company, the Santa Monica Chronicles. Chapter 1, The New Yorker and the Jailer. The golden California sun was beginning its slow descent over the Santa Monica Pier, casting long, amber shadows across the weathered wood of the boardwalk. The air carried the scent of salt spray and popcorn, a sensory tapestry that defined the seaside life of 1977. But inside the manager's apartment of the Mediterranean-style complex on 1014 and Croft Avenue, the atmosphere was considerably less picturesque. Stanley Roper sat in his favorite armchair, a sagging piece of furniture that smelled faintly of old cigars and desperation. His face was twisted into a mask of perpetual agitation, his brow furrowed as if he were trying to solve a complex mathematical equation that didn't exist. He was a man who seemed to have been born middle-aged and disgruntled, dressed in a short-sleeved button-down shirt that featured a pattern so loud it was practically shouting. Beside him, his wife Helen was focused on her nails. The rhythmic scritch, scritch, scritch of the file was, to Stanley, equivalent to a jackhammer at dawn. He winced with every stroke, his nerves frayed by the mere presence of domestic activity. "Be quiet, Helen," Stanley hissed, his voice a strained whisper that carried more weight than a shout. "You're gonna wake Karen." Helen didn't even look up. Her hair was a vibrant shade of red that nature hadn't intended, and her flowered caftan was a riot of 70s aesthetics. "Filing my nails is gonna wake up your knees. It's not the filing, Stanley, it's the breaking. Every time you break a nail, you swear loud enough to wake the dead. Oh, so that's what got you up. Just hold it down, will you?" Stanley adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses. "The poor girl flew in all the way from New York. She's exhausted. You've heard of jet lag, haven't you?" Helen sighed, finally setting the file down and looking at her husband with a mixture of pity and long-suffering exasperation. "Heard of it? I married it. You've been in a fog since the Eisenhower administration. You don't have jet lag, Stanley, you have life lag." Stanley ignored the barb. His brother had entrusted him with Karen, and in Stanley's mind, taking care of a young woman in her 20s meant acting as a self-appointed warden of a high-security prison. To him, Los Angeles was not the land of opportunity. It was a sprawling, neon-lit playground for freaks, weirdos, and perverts. He saw danger in every smile and a predator in every leisure suit. "She's trying to adjust to a new time zone," Stanley defended, leaning forward. "She's trying to adjust to living the life of a nun," Helen countered. "You never let her out of your sight. You're more like her jailer than her uncle. It's embarrassing, Stanley. The girl is beautiful. She's young. And she's stuck in this stuffy apartment listening to your war stories every night. Even the moths are getting bored. I took her to Disneyland." Stanley protested, his voice rising in defensive indignation. "I took her to the museum. We walked to the end of the pier. I told her every night about my experiences in the big one. You call that boring? Huh? Ellen, Ellen." Stanley suddenly barked, realizing his wife's eyes had glazed over, her head tilting slightly to the side. "Oh, sorry, Stanley." Helen blinked, shaking herself awake. "I must have drifted off. Probably because your list of fun activities sounds like a prescription for clinical insomnia. Taking a 20-year-old girl to a museum to look at dust is not a night on. The town." She leaned forward, her expression softening slightly, trying to reach whatever remained of Stanley's sense of empathy. "Look, she ought to be out having some fun with people her own age. She ought to be out dating, feeling the wind in her hair, meeting boys who don't remember the Roosevelt administration." Stanley recoiled as if she'd suggested Karen join a traveling circus or a radical political movement. Dating. In this city, it's crawling with freaks and weirdos. "Yes, I know," Helen finished for him, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "But what about the kids upstairs? They seem normal enough in a chaotic sort of way." Stanley paused. He thought of the trio in apartment 4. There was Jeannewood, the sensible florist who managed to keep the household from collapsing. Chrissy Snow, the dizzy but kind-hearted secretary who lived in a state of permanent blonde bewilderment. And Jack Tripper, Well, the chef. Stanley's eyebrows knit together. He tolerated Jack only because he believed the young